Welcome to another exciting episode of Mission Compliance, unleashing growth potential for defense contractors. In today's episode, we're breaking down the essentials of cybersecurity safeguarding requirements, focusing on DFARS, NIST SP 800-171, and CMMC compliance. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting to navigate these regulations, understanding the basics is crucial for protecting your organization's data and staying compliant. We'll explore the core requirements, common challenges, and practical tips to help you achieve and maintain compliance. So let's get started on our journey of mastering cybersecurity safeguarding. We're going to need a bigger boat. We're joined once again today by Mike Frieder, President of On-Call Compliance Solutions and a CMMC Professional Assessor. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman.
So, as I mentioned in the intro, and as I mentioned on last week's podcast, we're spending a couple of weeks going back to the basics here. And when you're talking about compliance, when you're talking about this kind of stuff, cybersecurity is at or near the top of the list. When you're doing this sort of stuff, a lot of these regulations have entire sections devoted specifically to cybersecurity measures and what to do with this and passwords and multi-factor and encryption and all this stuff. So we're going to talk about some of that today. So with that being said, how do DFARS, NIST, and CMMC complement each other in the context of cybersecurity safeguarding?
So that's a really great question, and I think it kind of is a really timely time to ask that question as CMMC appears set to become law in November of this year, being 2024. How does it all fit together? So let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about the individual pieces, and to talk about the individual pieces, we basically sort of have to go out of order. So the first one that we'll start with is NIST SP 800-171. So NIST SP 800-171 is a compliance standard put together by NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. It's a arm of our government that essentially sets standards and researches technologies on behalf of basically the American people. And the backstory behind 800-171 is this. In the early 2000s and mid 2000s, there was a lot of ransomware going on. And ransomware was basically the existential threat that was like the doomsday machine. I mean, you get ransomware, you're completely screwed. And there wasn't really very many good defenses at the time when this thing came out. I'll just be honest with you, as a managed IT service provider, it was a scary time to be in business, managing hundreds and hundreds of companies' technology at the time. And it's just a true nightmare to defend against. So we had been looking into solutions for NIST SP, excuse me, we had been looking into solutions for how to stop ransomware, and we had found some, and we eventually came across a reasonable formula that worked. Well, the United States government was doing the same thing, right? And so the people over at NIST, the researchers, they came up with this standard of NIST SP 800-171. And the idea was if you need to protect information, this is the way to do it in the simplest way. It's about 110 technical controls and policies and things you have to do in order to be compliant with it. And if you implement this standard of how to run your information security program, you will, in theory, not get wrecked by ransomware and a lot of other information security threats. About that same time, the DoD was really making a lot of noise in the government about the idea that it needed a solution to this problem. Simply put, it needed its defense contractors to quit getting hacked into, because you have to give a defense contractor enough information to do their job, which in a lot of cases, was enough information to figure out our technology and basically give away our competitive advantage. Drones were really coming in big on warfare at that time, and we had a huge advantage for a short time, but the enemy was able to steal our information and really take away that advantage pretty quickly. So the government comes up with 800-171, and they also came up with 853, and they said, okay, 853 is going to be this giant, massive library of all the things you can do to secure a system. And we're going to say to ourselves internally for the government, this is how you must secure yourself. Then we're going to make a private sector version that's easier to understand and a little bit more logical. We're going to call it 800-171. So they took 110 controls that they felt were important out of the 453 controls in 853, and they essentially made that a law via an implementation instrument. And I'll explain that in a minute. And they said, if you're going to do work with the DoD, you're going to have to use this security standard we created as a minimum baseline for security in your company for any system that is going to handle CUI or control unclassified information. So a couple other things that happen is along the way, this term CUI got created, and they're trying to sweep up all the other information standards into CUI. So things like FOMO and no foreign and ITAR and EAR and like all these different things needed an umbrella to refer to them as sensitive information. CUI was that way, controlled unclassified information. It needs to be controlled, but it's not classified and it's information. So they said, okay, we're going to take this standard and we're going to use it to protect quote unquote CUI. We're going to make a CUI registry. We're going to call everything under the sun CUI. And they did that. That is where NIST came in. So NIST is originally not actually a defense instrument, which is often confused. Oftentimes people think that NIST SP 800-171 is a defense standard. It's actually not. It's used outside of defense. NASA uses it. Homeland Security uses it. Soon the entire government will use it. And this is something that we're particularly excited about because we took that standard when it was released in 2016 and we applied it to every single one of our clients and we stopped getting ransomware. We stopped getting threats and we stopped having the problems that we were having with our IT services clients. It's just really an amazing thing. We were like singing and dancing under the rain. So then DFARS said, this makes so much sense. We're going to make it law. So it comes out in 2016. Very quickly, 2017, they adopt and they create a law called DFARS 252.204-7012. We refer to it as DFARS 7012 for short. And we basically just simply decided that, DoD simply decided that they were going to make it 100% mandatory immediately, no questions asked, bypassed a bunch of red tape. This is law. It actually really happened quite quickly for a government standard. So basically, effective 2017, all defense contractors must implement NIST SP 800-171. NIST SP 800-171 is their standard of choice for information security. It supersedes ISO, AS9100, all those other compliance standards that everybody has to already comply with as the paramount thing you must do in order to even be eligible to bid on a contract. That's how serious they were about it. So then we have to ask the question, okay, what's DFARS? What's DFARS 7012? So DFARS 7012 is a legal instrument under the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement, basically a law, very much like you wouldn't go down the street and break into a building. There's a law against that. There's a law against doing defense work without this standard implemented in place. Kind of a neat way to do it. So DFARS has a couple other rules. This is something that a lot of people don't realize. It's not just NIST SP 800-171. There is mandatory cyber incident reporting to the DoD if you get hacked or information leaks. There's many other things in DFARS, such as some limitations on cloud computing. Data residency. Data's got to be in the US. Cloud providers that you use have to be compliant. They have to be willing to allow for, a DoD investigation if there's a serious problem. Lots and lots and lots of fun stuff that are included in that law. But the idea was, hey, we need to protect controlled unclassified information. We're going to make a law. Here's what you got to do. And 2 sentences out of the entire DFARS 252.204-7012 legal clause actually deal with NIST SP 800-171. But because it's the most complex part to comply with and the part that takes the most work, it gets all the attention. Now, third piece of this is CMMC. So a little bit of a sad thing happened. They made NIST SP 800-171 a self-attestation. That means that you must self-certify that you are compliant with this stuff. Later, they actually said, hey, people aren't getting with this, so we want you to prove to us that you've done this by entering an SPRS score on your system security plan, right? SPRS stands for the Supplier Performance Risk System. And it is the risk system that the DoD uses to evaluate whether a contractor is risky or not to do business with. Kind of interesting. And they said, look, if your score is not in there, you're too risky to do business with. We won't do business with you. 2019, that law passes. Basically, 2019, they start getting a lot more defense contractors on the boat because now they have to enter an SPRS score and answer questions about it. Pretty serious stuff. Along the way, they also started suing people for false claims when they would claim that they were compliant with this stuff, and they weren't. So that was another really big, massive step. $5.2 billion in false claims penalties, I think, last year. And that's what they settled. That's not what they sued for. So there's still a lot more ongoing litigation. Seems to double every year. And the government is very serious. DCMA turns it over to the Department of Justice. It's a 1-2 punch and you're out. So they put some real teeth into it. They put some sort of proof on it. And yeah, they got real serious about it. In the meantime, they also said, you know what? We're so serious about it. We don't even want to give you any business unless you've had a third party come in and verify and validate that you're actually following these compliance standards. We call that CMMC certification. It was born in 2019, CMMC, or this, which is now known as a Cyber AB. They came along and they said, we are going to create a certification program along with the DoD, and we're going to certify that you are actually compliant, right? You know that old saying, trust but verify. So
Mhm.
now we can't trust you, right? We've established that. Before 2019, something like 1% of defense contractors had even tried to get compliant with NIST. Now, it's far greater than that. You're definitely behind the eight ball if you're not up with this stuff. I would say that if you're just getting started, just go ahead and call us. It's so much easier than trying to take the next 24 months of your life to figure this stuff out. Anyway, I think the point is that um, they really have gotten to the point now where they said, we can't just trust you. We can't even trust you're going to put information correctly into our federal systems, creating a guaranteed false claim in writing. We're now going to have a third party certify that you're actually following the direction, and that third party will be supervised by the DoD. So now we have this third sort of iteration, which is the verify part. So now we've tried to put in the trust. Now we're putting in the verify. And beginning in November, it will be law that if your contract requires a CMMC certification by a third party, which a lot of defense contracts are believed to require that, then you and your supplier partners will potentially be required to go through the certification process. So, Roman, I hope that answered that question. That's where we are. I think there's some further steps off in the future that I'll speculate about, but that are not evidentiary. One of those is that they're going to be making executives and CEOs actually sign the paperwork now. So right now, anybody can go into SPRS and enter the score. It is known that you will have executive sign off required by a manager or partner of the company. It's a big step. It gives the government a throat to choke.
But absolutely, that was an extremely going into a lot of detail on everything. So I find it very helpful for our listeners. And with that, can you share the question specifically says NIST, but feel free to go to DFARS and CMMC as well. Can you share some potentially common cybersecurity pitfalls that organizations might encounter when trying to implement these and how they can overcome them?
Well, I'll tell you what, Roman, that is a 3-day answer that none of our listeners want to hear. Um, I will say we have some common things that we find when we're working with clients. Particularly small to mid-sized clients, under 500 employees, we find many of them do not understand the value of risk management, and they do not understand the value of a security information and event management system. And they don't really oftentimes even know what those things do. So I think one of the things that is really key for people to understand is that the goal is to not get hacked. The goal is not to put an antivirus in place so that when bad stuff gets on your computer, there can be a reaction to it. The goal is to keep these people out of your system to begin with. That just simply requires a whole different set of tools than most IT people are used to dealing with. It's not just throw a nice endpoint protection solution on, it's more than that. It's ongoing security monitoring. So I think in that aspect of things, it's a pretty powerful scenario. It's a really powerful scenario, actually. And it requires people to um, really kind of step up what they are used to being required to do when it comes to information security, where they otherwise may not have had to do that. So that's one of the ones. And I think, I'll just tell you that, again, I could talk forever on this because we see all of the pitfalls. First and foremost, I think a general understanding of the training aspect is tough. But here's the bright side, right? There's two ways you can do this. You can figure it out yourself, right? And that's going to have its own set of pitfalls. It'll probably take you a year to 2 years to do it. Your company needs you to do it now because they're trying to win work now. That's the whole point of this. And they just you got to do what you got to do in business. The second thing is even really good IT directors have to level up their understanding of cybersecurity to comply with this thing. To me, one of my favorite parts is that it helps our clients to mature up, which is tough to do in IT, right? Because in IT, it's generally, hey, make sure our stuff runs. And much beyond that, you're, more or less kind of like treading water every day. Now it is, hey, you got to actually plan. You got to be proactive. You got to do real risk management, things that a lot of IT directors are just not really used to having to do.
Absolutely. And so with that being said as well, you know, you have these certain challenges and then CMMC is entering the conversation here within recent history and in the future here. So how does CMMC compliance and enhance the cybersecurity framework established by DFARS and NIST? And what steps should companies take to achieve CMMC certification?
Great question. So, the first thing I'll tell you is that the goal of the program is to have defense contractors or those people who want to comply with it implement a true layered security approach that will really protect information. That's the goal. Uh, as far as what should they do if they're looking for resources or they're trying to get compliant, well, I would advocate that the first step is to call us. That's what we do, right? I mean, that's softball throw, right? At the end of the day, this is what we do. We help people go from zero to compliant. We walk the walk with them. We support them before, during, and after. And we do it for hundreds and hundreds of companies in the defense industrial base. This is where we live. This is our jam. We've managed technology for thousands and thousands of companies over the last 21 years. And I'll tell you, this is what we do every day. We're probably working with 3 to 5 to 6 new defense contractors a week. So I think another really nice thing about us is we have a volume-based approach. We're not sitting there trying to gouge everybody for ridiculous money. We're very cost effective. We must be. We've got hundreds of clients flowing in every year. So I think that might provide a little bit of peace of mind for folks that a good first step is just give us a call. There's never an obligation to call us, and we actually do a lot of free education with people with zero hooks in you, right? You can call us. We'll put you through some learning sessions with our teams, our certified compliance experts, and we do this as a service to the defense industrial base. We do this for companies that need to rapidly get compliant and just want this thing solved. And the best part is, if you do choose to engage with us, we can solve all of this for you, and we can do it in a matter of days, not weeks or months or years. I always tell our clients, and our sales teams tell our clients, hey, if you hear the magical word subscription or monthly payment when you're trying to get compliant, run. Like that's all there is to it. Run. It doesn't have to be that way. There is a better way. There's a lot of companies out there that have created like a one size fits all solution that won't really get you compliant. There's a lot of companies out there who really just want to gouge you for some kind of monthly recurring revenue. We don't do that. You need to get compliant right now. You know what? You can hire us one time. We can come in for a couple days, basically do a giant shift and lift of our best practices and compliance standards and standard operating procedures and policies and everything you need. Tailor it to you, and then you will be compliant to win your business. That is what we do. And it's what we specialize in. It's what we're the best at in the world. So that's what I would do. I'd love to give you a little bit of an off-brand solution, but you could certainly go and spend your own time reading hundreds of pages of legalese and techno mumbo jumbo and trying to figure this out yourself. But boy, it's a heavy lift. I'll tell you, we spent years developing the program we have in place now. It's awesome, and it delivers on what people need like no other company in the world can do. And we're really proud of that because it gets a lot of amazing and rave reviews, and it helps people that do work in the defense industry who may not have been able to any other way. So that's what I'd recommend. Call on call. That's what we do. You can visit our website, cmmccompliancesecrets.com. There's a little plug.
Yeah, no, speaking of plug, you know, for more information, if you go to our YouTube channel, we have a playlist that breaks down every single CMMC control and what it is, why it's there, all sorts of stuff, and it's done by Mike himself. So you know that what you're hearing here is gonna match up with what you see in those videos, as well as we've just started. So be on the lookout for we're going back through those compliance controls and telling you why they're important. So our YouTube channel strives to give you all the information possible. Check it out on YouTube. Go to the website, as Mike said, and yeah, call on call. We're here for you. We got your back. That's what we do. On that note, that wraps up our normal question period, and anybody that's listened to the previous 61 episodes of this podcast knows that we like to wrap it up by asking a silly question and kind of bringing this kind of down where the previous three questions might be a little serious. We're bringing it down now with a silly question. And you might also know, if you listen to this podcast, that we like superheroes. We asked a question about superheroes last week, and here we are again. But Mike, this one's a little bit different. This is kind of an either or situation. So, if cybersecurity compliance were a superhero, would it be more like Batman with a utility belt full of tools, or Spider-Man with a web of interconnected safeguards, and why?
I think it's a pretty easy one. It's probably Spider-Man. I think the interconnected nature, a lot of people tell me when they first go through NIST SP 800-171, they say, man, all these controls are redundant, right? And if you read it one time very quickly and don't, really look at what's there, you probably would think the same thing. But in fact, they're not redundant. They're actually a little bit different and is like a beautiful woven web, or really more like an onion, right, with lots and lots of layers. But it's not just a bunch of gadgets thrown into a belt like Batman. It's much more comprehensive. It's a web where, anyone who's flying through the web, I think, will probably be stopped by some layer of that cybersecurity, onion, if you will. So, yeah, I think Spider-Man's going to win the day. That's a pretty easy one. A little bit of a low ball.
You know, my response that I would have to anybody that would think that these controls are redundant, um, is even if they were, don't you think there's a reason for that? Anytime you hear something said over and over and over again, it probably means it's important. And there's a reason why these controls are broken down into security awareness, into audit and awareness, into specific like multi-factor authentication. There's a reason these controls are broken down into control families, because there's multiple controls within a certain area of security. So yeah, they might seem redundant, but there's a reason for that, right?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree.
And that wraps up another great episode of Mission Compliance. We hope our discussion today has provided you with valuable insights, practical strategies, and inspiration to navigate the ever evolving world of defense. I know I'm inspired. I don't know how you can listen to this and not be inspired. But we'd like to extend our appreciation to the inspiration himself, Mike, for joining us with this valuable information on cybersecurity. Thanks, Mike.
Oh, always a pleasure. And listen, it's not just me. We have a whole team here at On Call that makes it happen. So don't let me take credit for everything. It's there's a lot of people in production that make this thing happen.
We talk about it all the time. We have our sales guys go into calls and everything, and the people that they get onto calls with get upset when Mike's not there. It's like, oh, we thought we were going to talk to the YouTube guy. Where is Mike? So hey, you're just the face of the process.
That's it. I got the face for radio. That's it.
But the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics and engage with fellow listeners using the hashtag Mission Compliance Podcast. If you haven't already, what should they do, Mike?
Well, they should like, subscribe, and you know what? Tell a friend. It's a pretty awesome podcast, and once in a while we make really fun Spider-Man jokes.
There you go. You got friends. Tell them about it. It'll be fun. They'll thank you later. Uh, like you said, if you follow the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, you'll be the first to know when new episodes like this one are released. And we'd appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate and review the show, because your feedback helps us to continue to bring you thought-provoking episodes and high-quality content. Join us next time as we delve further into the dynamic world of defense, security, and industry innovation. Until then, take care, stay informed, and make compliance your mission. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.